You've probably seen some or all of the Mission Impossible films already, but with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation coming out this Friday, you might want to refresh your memory in case any old characters or storylines should pop up. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to watch this recap of the first 4 Mission Impossible films in under 15 minutes. Starting with movie number 1. Jim Phelps leads a team of agents who work for the Impossible Missions Force, or IMF. His point man is Ethan Hunt, and they're given a mission to go to the American Embassy in Prague to prevent the theft of a digital list of secret agents called the Knock List. During the infiltration, all hell breaks loose. Every member of the team dies except Ethan.
They're all dead!
Jim Phelps is shot and he falls off a bridge. His wife Claire blows up in a car, Sarah gets stabbed, and Jack does a horrible job moving out of the way of some sharp metal on top of an elevator. Ethan meets up with IMF director Eugene Kittredge, who tells him that the Knock List is safe at CIA headquarters in Virginia, and that the mission was a setup to try and weed out a mole in IMF who wanted to steal the list and sell it. He assumes that since Ethan is the only one left alive, that he must be the mole. He uses some explosive gum to make an escape, and heads back to the safe house. Ethan figures out how to contact the arms dealer and says he wants to meet, pretending to be the real mole. Claire shows back up at the safe house and says she escaped the car before the bomb blew it up. Ethan warns the arms dealer, Max, that the Knock List she received was a fake, and promises to deliver the real list in exchange for $10 million and the identity of the real mole. Claire and Ethan track down disavowed IMF agents Luther Stickle and Franz Krieger, and head to infiltrate CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. In a very thrilling sequence where Ethan has to hang above the floor and catch his own sweat, they retrieve the Knock List and escape. While planning their next move in London, Jim Phelps shows up again. He says he survived being shot and that he believes Kittredge is the real mole. Ethan plans a meeting with Max on a high-speed train to exchange the Knock List. Claire enters the baggage car and talks to Jim about their evil scheme. Jim and Claire were the moles the whole time. But then Jim removes his face and it's Ethan. He uses video camera glasses, a huge novelty back in 1996, to show the IMF that Phelps is still alive, after which Phelps shoots Claire and tries to escape with the $10 million. They have a nice little fight on a train and a helicopter, and Ethan again uses the explosive gun to blow up the helicopter flown by Phelps' other accomplice, Krieger, and magically fly back to the train. Kittredge arrests Max, and Ethan becomes the new leader of an IMF team. Now, and I'm sorry that we have to do this, you're ready for Mission Impossible 2. This movie sucks. We'll get through it as quick as we can. We begin with Ethan on a plane helping Biosite pharmaceutical scientist Dr. Vladimir Nekorovich travel from Sydney to Atlanta. Nekorovich has injected himself with a virus Biosite developed called Chimera, and is carrying its antidote, Bellerophon, with him. But it turns out that Ethan is not Ethan. He's really a rogue agent named Sean Ambrose. Him and his team steal the antidote and jump out of the plane before it crashes into a mountain. The real Ethan Hunt is hanging out on a mountain in Utah when he's told he needs to recruit master thief Naya. They flirt at a flamenco club and while driving on a highway, and then sleep together. Afterward, Anthony Hopkins tells Ethan that Naya used to date Ambrose and he needs them to get back together, a la Hitchcock's Notorious, to get information about Chimera. This obviously upsets Ethan since, you know. He again enlists Luther and adds to his team a pilot named Billy Baird. By getting cozy with Ambrose, Naya steals data about Chimera and gives it to Ethan. He learns that the virus has a convenient 20-hour window before which no symptoms are visible, and after which you are basically Ambrose feels Naya slipping the memory card back into his pocket and gives a look like, "I'm onto you." Ethan's team kidnaps the CEO of Biosite and makes him think that he's been infected with Chimera so that he spills his whole plan, how he wanted a superbug developed so that he could make a fortune off the cure. Ethan realizes that Ambrose only has the cure, not the disease, so he plans to break into Biosite headquarters to destroy Chimera. Meanwhile, Ambrose has impersonated Ethan again to verify that Naya is indeed betraying him. In a far less thrilling sequence than in MI1, Ethan cables down through a vent in the very top of Biosite HQ, but is intercepted by Ambrose and his men before he can destroy all the Chimera. To prevent Ambrose from getting the virus, Naya injects it into herself. Ethan blows up the place and jumps out the window, leaving Naya with Ambrose. He dumps Naya in Sydney, hoping to start a pandemic and get rich off shares of Biosite. Ethan sneaks into Ambrose's evil lair along with some birds because John Woo uses another series of masks to trick Ambrose and takes off with the antidote. Then it's just a big gunfight and a motorcycle chase, where Ethan saves Naya and kills Ambrose. Let's pause just a second here to talk about Dougray Scott. He was originally signed on to play Wolverine in Bryan Singer's X-Men, but shooting on this movie ran so long he had to back out of X-Men, and Hugh Jackman was given the role. Yeah, sucks for Dougray Scott. Ethan and Naya end up together, but it doesn't matter, she's gone in the next movie. Okay, that wasn't so bad, was it? It's all uphill from here. Mission Impossible 3. Ethan has short hair again. And he's engaged to a woman named Julia who has no idea he's a secret agent. She thinks he's a traffic analyst. They have a big engagement party. Jesse Pinkman stops by. Everything's great. Unfortunately, he gets a call. He's told that an agent he trained, Lindsay Ferris, has gone missing while following a black market arms trafficker named Owen Davian. They believe he's kidnapped Ferris. He's got a new team this time, plus Luther, who's back. Again. So it's off to Berlin. The team rescues Lindsay, but an explosive implanted in her head kills her before she can give them any information. The next day at work, IMF Director Brassel gives Ethan shit for the botched mission, but Agent Musgrave defends Ethan. After the funeral, Ethan receives a postcard from Lindsay that she sent before she died, with a microdot on it. What's that? No clue. Simon Pegg finds out from some salvaged computers that Davian is going to be at a function in Vatican City to buy something called the MacGuffin, or the Rabbit's Foot. Not trusting anyone, Ethan decides to head to the Vatican without telling any of his supervisors to go after Davian. Before he leaves, he has a quickie wedding with Julia and some alone time. If you're keeping track, that makes Ethan 3 for 3 in these movies. So they get to Rome, Ethan rappels up a wall to get into the Vatican, and for some reason says,
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall.
He does the hanging above the ground thing, again. He and Luther blow up part of a wall, and they use a photo of Davian to make a Philip Seymour Hoffman mask. Meanwhile, the real Davian has picked up a briefcase, but Ethan knocks him out in the bathroom and takes his place, and the briefcase. It turns out the briefcase only includes the location of the rabbit's foot, not the item itself. Davian is unfazed by being captured and threatens Ethan, after which Ethan nearly throws Davian out of the plane. Luther is able to decode Lindsay's microdot, and they find a video file, where Lindsay says that she tapped Davian's phone and intercepted a call from Brassel. He's been giving Davian information. There's barely time to process this information when... Davian's people blow the hell out of a bridge, enabling him to escape and enabling Ethan to make this nifty move. Ethan rushes to his wife, but Julia's already been kidnapped. Davian gives Ethan 2 days to get the rabbit's foot or else he'll kill her. The IMF captures Ethan, but Musgrave helps him escape and mounts the location of the rabbit's foot. Ethan flies to Shanghai, does some quick math, jumps off a building, steals the rabbit's foot, jumps out of another building, and meets up with Davian's people, who shoot an explosive up his nose. Davian threatens Julia, claiming he didn't deliver the real rabbit's foot. He shoots her.
10.
Turns out, though, that isn't Julia. It's really a Davian henchman in a Julia mask meant to ensure that Ethan was on the up and up. Musgrave reveals himself as the real mole, bent on using Davian's transaction with terrorists to start a war in the Middle East. Ethan attacks him and escapes. He rescues Julia, kills Davian, and then asks Julia to electrocute him in order to prevent the explosion that Davian triggered in his head. Julia shoots Musgrave, Ethan comes clean about being a secret agent, and gets to live happily ever after with Julia. And we never get to find out what the damn rabbit's foot is. Home stretch, guys. One movie left to cover. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. IMF agent Trevor Hanaway, aka Sawyer, is killed by an assassin in Budapest. Meanwhile, Ethan Hunt sits in a prison in Moscow. For what? We don't know. Benji and new character Jane Carter help him escape, along with another prisoner named Bogdan. Agent Carter explains that Hanaway had grabbed a bag from a courier containing Russian nuclear launch codes. That's what the assassin, Sabine Moreau, took with her. Ethan knows her, says she works for an extremist with the codename Cobalt. Carter asks Benji why Ethan was in prison, and Benji said he disappeared. Ethan's mission is to infiltrate the Kremlin to discover Cobalt's identity. But when they get there, the files on Cobalt are already gone. Someone we don't know kills a guard and alerts the Russians to the team's presence. They escape, but the Kremlin explodes, Tom Cruise runs, and the Russians think he did it. But Ethan, as he does, escapes. He meets up with the IMF secretary and learns that Cobalt's true identity is Kurt Hendricks, a nuclear strategist who stole a launch control device from the Kremlin, and all he needs to launch nukes against the US are the codes, which Sabine Moreau has. He also learns that the president has initiated Ghost Protocol, which disavows IMF. The secretary wants them to disappear and secretly stop Hendricks from acquiring the launch codes. The secretary is shot and killed by Russian forces, and Ethan escapes with the secretary's right-hand man, William Brandt. Ethan's team and Brandt head to the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, where Moreau plans to give the launch codes to Hendricks' associate, Wistrom. Fortunately for our entertainment value, the Burj Khalifa is the tallest building in the world, and Ethan needs to use suction gloves to hang outside the building and climb up 11 stories to break into the server room. Wistrom arrives with a kidnapped cryptographer to authenticate the codes, so Ethan decides to give him the real codes so he'll lead them to Hendricks. They trick both Moreau and Wistrom, so they're really meeting with the IMF team instead of each other. Wistrom kills the cryptographer, and Moreau figures out Brandt is a spy. A fancy fight ensues, and Carter kicks Moreau out the window. Ethan chases Wistrom, first on foot, then GTA style in a big sandstorm. It turns out that Wistrom was Hendricks in a mask the whole time, and he gets away. Ethan confronts Brandt, wanting to know how an ordinary analyst can be such a badass fighter. After Ethan leaves in a huff, Brandt tells Carter and Benji that he had shadowed Ethan and Julia on a trip when a Serbian hit squad kidnapped Julia and killed her. Ethan caught up with the Serbians and killed them, and that's why he was in a Russian prison. Ethan meets up with Bogdan, whose arms dealer cousin tells him that Hendricks will go to Mumbai to acquire a military satellite to launch the nukes. So they go. Carter uses her feminine charms to extract the satellite code from tech billionaire Brij Knopf. Jeremy Renner does the hang above the ground thing this time, and Ethan catches up with Hendricks, who kills himself to make sure the missiles go off. But Ethan stops it at the last minute and the bomb drops harmlessly into the water. Later, Ethan is having beer with good old Luther when the team comes by. Ethan reveals to Brandt that his wife's death and the killing of the Serbian nationals was all fake to protect her and get him into prison in Russia. Just then, Julia shows up. She's alive. Oh goody. As Ethan walks away, he gets another mission involving the Syndicate, setting up Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Well, that about does her. Wraps her all up. 4 movies, more Ving Rhames than you thought, and a lot of hanging above stuff. Your next mission, should you choose to accept it, is to see Mission Impossible Rogue Nation in theaters this Friday. Subscribe to What's Trending as well. Hang above the ground while you do it, and you'll be in great shape.